Hi guys, sorry to interrupt your viewing, but please subscribe to the channel and like this video. Thank you.
I remember exactly how the candles flickered that night, the way the low golden light danced across polished silverware, and her mother's wine glass trembled just slightly in her hand. The place was one of those overpriced, dimly lit restaurants that make you whisper for no reason and pay for the illusion of intimacy. She picked it, of course. Cassie always picked the places. Cassie always picked everything. The wine, the restaurant, the seat I'd take. She even corrected how I ordered my steak the first few years. Medium rare makes you look like you know what you're doing, she once said, and back then, I nodded like a good husband should. That was back when I still thought we were building something worth keeping. This was our 12th wedding anniversary, though no one at the table mentioned that out loud. Not once. There were 10 people seated around us, all from her side of the family. Her parents, her brother Dylan with his new girlfriend, some yoga instructor with a fake laugh, her Aunt Trish and Uncle Rob, and 2 of her cousins I couldn't stand enough to remember their names. Not one person from my side. Not one phone call. Not one text from anyone who shared my blood. But that wasn't unusual. Over the years, she'd quietly trimmed them out of our lives like dead branches from a tree, always with a reason that sounded just reasonable enough to ignore the damage. The air felt tight that night, even before she stood up. It wasn't what she wore, though she did look incredible in that deep red dress, or the way she'd barely looked me in the eyes since we sat down. It was something else. Like a loaded pause before a punchline. I should have known something was coming. I should have trusted that gut feeling, the one I'd trained myself to silence because keeping the peace always felt easier than confronting the war. Then she rose to her feet, slowly, her wine glass held in delicate fingers with her wedding ring catching the candlelight like a spotlight on a stage. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. I knew that smile. I'd seen it right before arguments. Right before she twisted the knife but kept her tone soft enough to pretend she didn't mean to stab. To the man who wasted 12 years of my life, she said, and time didn't stop, it just dragged itself to a crawl, like a slow-motion car crash I could neither avoid nor interrupt. For a second, I genuinely thought I misheard her. There was a beat of silence, the kind that should have been filled with someone saying, "Wait, what?" But instead, laughter erupted, from Dylan first, then her cousins, then even her damn mother covered her mouth and chuckled like it was a sitcom line and not a grenade tossed into our marriage. "At least you got a tax break, huh?" Dylan added, lifting his glass and grinning like the smug bastard he always was. The yoga girl let out a giggle that sounded like she'd never heard a real problem in her life. I didn't laugh. I didn't even blink. 12 years. She said 12 like it was just a number, not a lifetime. Like it wasn't the birthdays I remembered, even when she forgot mine. Like it wasn't the late nights I sat beside her hospital bed when she got that infection. Like it wasn't the job offer I turned down because moving meant she'd be too far from her parents. It was 12 years of being slowly molded into something useful, something quiet, something obedient enough to take the hits, and still show up with flowers every damn April 5th. I didn't ask her what the hell that toast meant. I didn't slam my glass down or throw my napkin across the table. I didn't yell. What I did was reach for my wallet, slide out my card, and wave the waiter over. His eyes darted between Cassie and me like he'd just walked into a domestic crime scene with no exit strategy. "Put it all on this," I told him. I didn't ask for the check to be split. I paid for the wine, the entrees, the appetizers they ordered before I even sat down, the 2 bottles of red her mother wouldn't shut up about. Paid for the table of people who clapped when she gave a toast to my failure. Cassie watched me do it. I caught her eyes then. They weren't cruel, not exactly. They were satisfied. Like a cat that finally knocked over the vase after stalking it for days. She wanted me to react, to crumble, to fight back so she could play victim again. But I didn't give her that. I signed the receipt, stood up slowly, and tucked my chair in like a polite stranger at a business meeting. I didn't look at her. I didn't look at any of them. I just walked out. Out of the restaurant, out of the performance, out of 12 years of trying to be enough for someone who never stopped taking inventory of my flaws. That night, I drove without music. Just the sound of tires against asphalt and my own heartbeat hammering like I was still inside that damn room. I didn't go home. I went to a motel an hour out of town and paid cash. Cheap, ugly room with a flickering TV and the smell of old cigarettes soaked into the carpet. But it was quiet. The next morning, I turned my phone off. Stayed off for 2 days. No news. No calls. No messages. Just silence. And then, when I finally turned it back on, I saw them. 56 messages. All from her. And every single one started with my name. Not babe. Not hey. Just my name. That's when I knew. Something had cracked wide open. The first message lit up my screen with the kind of energy you feel when lightning crackles too close to your window, bright, sharp, and warning you something's about to hit. It was a simple sentence, but the tone carried that familiar high-pitched whine I knew far too well, even in text form. Why did you embarrass me like that? That was at 6:42 in the morning. She never used to wake up that early, unless she had something particularly nasty planned for the day. I stared at it without opening it, just let the notification bar hold the weight of her words while I sipped bitter motel coffee and stared through the yellowed blinds at the parking lot outside, where some trucker was arguing with a vending machine. By 7, 3 more messages came through, each one less about her embarrassment and more about mine. You just walked out like a child, she wrote. Then, you made me look crazy. You always do this. That one hit a nerve. The way she always framed it, me being cold, distant, calculated, when really, I just learned how to go quiet instead of going insane. That's what she never understood. Silence wasn't cowardice, it was strategy. It was the only shield I had left. Still, I didn't respond. Not at 7, not at 10, not even when the messages shifted from guilt to rage. You humiliated me, she typed, followed quickly by, I should have left you years ago. Then the kicker, you never fight for us. You never fight for me. I let out a laugh, short and low, not because it was funny, but because if I didn't laugh, I might have screamed into the laminate desk in that dingy motel room. She wanted me to fight? I'd been fighting for 12 years, just not with fists or yelling, fighting to be seen, to be heard, to be allowed to want something that didn't have her name on it. Around noon, the messages stopped, and I thought maybe she'd burned out. But then a new number pinged my phone, and sure enough, it was her mother. You've really disappointed us, Joyce wrote, like she was drafting a Christmas card and not stepping into a mess that didn't belong to her. Cassie deserves better than this, she added. Then, you owe her an apology. I nearly dropped the phone. An apology? For what exactly? For paying the bill? For not flipping the table and turning into the monster they always wanted me to be? That would have made them feel justified, I guess. Easier to paint me as the bad guy if I started yelling. Then Dylan texted. That smug jackass even had the nerve to call me, bro, look, bro, I get it. You're upset, he said, as if we were sharing beers over a football game and not talking about the fact that his sister publicly lit my dignity on fire. But you really hurt her. That toast was a joke, man. You took it too serious. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. It was never a joke. Cassie never joked like that. Every word she said had a blade tucked inside it, and I knew damn well Dylan was just trying to smooth things over before things got messy for the family's reputation. At 4 in the afternoon, another message came in from her. You ruined 15 years of my life. I blinked at it for a full minute, then whispered to myself, 15. Funny how 12 years turned into 15 real quick. Guess they forgot how calendars work. Or maybe she was counting the years we were dating before the marriage, though even then, we were together for only 2 before the wedding. But that's how it always was with her, stretching facts to fit whatever story she needed to sell at the moment. If it made me look worse, it became gospel truth. Still, I said nothing. Not a word. Silence is a mirror, and I wanted her to see her own reflection in it. When you stop feeding the monster, it either starves or gets louder. And Cassie? She got louder. By the time evening rolled around, the messages took on a new tone. Less anger, more strategy. Let's talk, she wrote. We need to work this out. Then, we've built a life together. You don't just walk away from that. No apology, no recognition of what she'd done at that dinner table. Just a quiet, manipulative pivot toward reconciliation, as if my absence had finally made her realize she couldn't control the story anymore. Then, just after midnight, the final message came in: I'm coming by tomorrow. I'm bringing my cousin, he's a lawyer. Of course she was. Not to solve anything. Not to talk. But to remind me what cards she still thought she held. Cassie never played fair. She played smart. She played to win. But she forgot something critical. I'd stopped playing. She showed up without knocking, the way someone does when they're still convinced the house is theirs, still convinced that no matter what they've done, they'll be welcomed in like nothing ever happened. I was back at home by then, 2 days after the restaurant fiasco, 2 nights of motel sheets and microwave dinners behind me, and just like that, she was there again, standing in the doorway like she had a right to be. No cousin. No lawyer. Just her, and that fake calm she always used when she was gearing up to sell a lie she hoped I'd buy. She didn't even flinch when I opened the door. She just stepped inside like we'd planned this. No hello. No apology. No questions. She walked right into the living room, sat down on the same couch we used to eat takeout on during our so-called date nights, and crossed her legs like she was settling in for a conversation she already controlled. Her dress was casual, but calculated: jeans, fitted black sweater, just enough effort to seem effortless. Her hair pulled back. Not too much makeup. She wanted to look honest. I just want to talk like adults, she said, and I swear her voice was steady enough to fool a stranger, but not me. I'd heard it tremble before. I knew what it sounded like when she meant something. This wasn't that. I didn't sit. I didn't offer her coffee or ask how she'd been. I just stood there, arms crossed, letting her talk. The longer I stayed silent, the more she filled the space with words, like she couldn't stand the echo of her own decisions bouncing back at her. It started after our 10th anniversary, she said suddenly, as if skipping straight to the point would earn her some kind of honesty badge. I needed to feel wanted. You weren't there. Not the way I needed you to be. There it was. Not regret. Not sorrow. Just explanation. Cold and clinical. Like she was filling out a form and checking the box next to acceptable excuse for betrayal. I didn't ask who. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't even blink. That silence? It was louder than anything I could have said. And that silence, my silence, rattled her because she expected a fight. She always expected a fight. She liked when I got defensive because it made her feel like she'd won something. You don't have anything to say? She asked, her voice tilting upward just slightly, searching for a reaction. I finally spoke, and I made damn sure my voice was lower than hers, calmer than hers, because nothing cuts deeper than composure in the face of someone else's chaos. I know, I said. She tilted her head. Know what? His name is Greg, I said. He's a trainer at the gym you started going to 6 months after our 10th anniversary. You left your emails open. The pause that followed was thick enough to chew through. Her face didn't fall apart, it shifted. Just enough for me to see the cracks in the performance. The edges curled up around her mouth like she was about to smile, but her eyes betrayed her. You've known this whole time? She asked, the words coming slower now, like she was calculating how many lies she'd told and which ones were still safe. I nodded. I just wanted to see how far you'd go. That's what broke her cool. Her mouth twitched. Her foot tapped once against the floor, like she was testing the ground for stability, and when it didn't give way, she stood up slowly and walked to the window like she was about to deliver some deep monologue. Greg doesn't mean anything, she said. It wasn't about him. Of course it wasn't, I said. It was about control. She turned to face me again, arms crossed now, mirroring my stance like we were 2 gunslingers waiting for someone to twitch. But I didn't flinch. She was the one who looked smaller, not physically, but like a balloon that had been losing air for weeks and just realized it was too late to patch the leak. So, now what? She asked, her voice soft again, like we could pretend we were back at the beginning. Like we were standing in our first apartment with nothing but cheap furniture and takeout menus on the fridge. I stepped closer. Not enough to scare her. Just enough to make sure she heard me the first time. Now, I said, we play by my rules. That was the last thing I said that day. Because there's a kind of revenge that doesn't need shouting. Doesn't need punches or slammed doors or burning down everything you built. No, the most dangerous revenge is patient. It's quiet. It's methodical. And it's already in motion before they even know they've lost. I didn't yell. I didn't throw her out. I just left her standing in the house she thought she owned, confused, unsteady, trying to figure out if I was bluffing or if I'd already won. She'd find out soon enough. I never believed in revenge the way it's shown in movies. No grand explosions, no shouting matches under pouring rain, no courtroom drama or last-minute confessions. Real revenge, the kind that sticks and lingers in the bones, doesn't announce itself. It builds slowly, brick by quiet brick, until one day they turn around and realize the house they thought was theirs is already gone, and you were just polite enough not to slam the door on your way out. I started planning everything the night she came home smelling like someone else's cologne, claimed it was from hugging a friend goodbye, and looked me dead in the eye like she dared me to question it. That was almost 7 months before the dinner. 7 months of long nights staring at the ceiling, pretending to be asleep while her phone buzzed quietly under her pillow. 7 months of watching the woman I married vanish inch by inch, leaving behind only some polished version of herself meant for public display, laughs too loud at dinner parties, hands always adjusting her hair, eyes never meeting mine unless there was something she needed. I didn't scream. I didn't accuse. I documented. The first thing I did was move the bulk of our savings into a separate account, quietly, strategically, just enough at a time that she wouldn't notice unless she actually checked the statements, which I knew she wouldn't because math bored her and money, to her, was just something that appeared when she wanted things. Then I got a small apartment on the other side of town, furnished it with just enough to live in, but made sure it stayed off the radar. No one knew. Not even my coworkers. It was my bunker. My quiet space. My proof that I had options. After that, I started recording conversations. Not everything. Just the ones that mattered. The fights where she called me a ghost, told me I was nothing without her, whispered names in her sleep that didn't belong to me. I backed up her emails, screenshots of her calendar, even her Google location history. I didn't need all of it. I just needed enough to build a narrative. One she couldn't argue against when it finally came crashing down. And I saw a divorce attorney twice. He was the kind of guy who didn't blink when I told him I wanted the paperwork ready, but not filed. Waiting for a trigger? He asked. I nodded. Let me guess, he said. You're just waiting to see how deep the knife goes before you decide to pull it out. The man knew the game. He printed everything, handed me a folder, and said, the moment you say go, this gets filed. Until then, you're a ghost. I didn't expect the trigger to be a restaurant toast, but in hindsight, it makes sense. Cassie never did know the value of silence. She wanted to win loudly, humiliate me in front of witnesses, twist the knife until it scraped bone, and ask me why I was bleeding. That toast? That was her last move. That was her raising the stakes without knowing I already had the winning hand tucked in my sleeve. So when she came back to the house a few days later, still pretending we were having adult conversations, still spinning the story to make herself the victim of my emotional withdrawal, I didn't argue. I just handed her a flash drive. No folder, no label, just a simple plastic stick containing everything I'd been collecting. Texts with Greg. Emails with her friend where she joked about how easy I was to manipulate. Voice recordings of the nights she accused me of cheating when she was the one sneaking out after midnight. She blinked, confused, then furious, then scared. You can leave with dignity, I said, not raising my voice even once, or I can drop everything into a group message with your church board, your employer, and your mother. Her face turned pale. No more seduction. No more fake laughs. Just her standing in the living room like the air had been sucked out of it. She tried to pivot, asked if we could start over, said she missed how things used to be, even put her hand on my chest like that would mean something now. When that didn't work, she started crying. Real tears, maybe. But it was too late for truth. I'd given her chances to come clean. She used every single one to dig deeper into the lie. "You can't do this," she whispered. "I'm not doing anything," I said. "I already did it." I walked out without slamming the door. No dramatic final words. No goodbye. I went to the apartment, opened the closet, and saw exactly what I wanted to see: my own clothes, my own space, untouched and unbothered by her world. She stayed in the house, surrounded by furniture I bought and guilt she earned. I left her with her secrets, with her stories, and with the awful realization that she wasn't in control anymore. I thought that would be the end of it. But the next night, around 10:30, there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, Greg stood there, eyes swollen, one side of his mouth bleeding slightly, looking like he'd just walked out of a bad soap opera bar fight. His voice cracked when he spoke. "She told me everything," he said, "but I've got one question." And just like that, I realized the game wasn't over. Not even close. When I opened the door and saw Greg standing there with one eye swollen nearly shut and a small stream of dried blood crusted near the corner of his lip, I didn't feel surprise. I felt confirmation, like watching the last domino fall exactly where I knew it would. He looked like he hadn't slept, his shirt wrinkled, hair wild, and that cocky smirk he usually wore around the gym had vanished completely. He didn't ask to come in. He just stood there breathing heavy like he'd run the whole way or maybe just realized how far off the cliff he'd driven without checking the map. "I need to talk," he said, voice low but urgent, like the words were burning in his chest and he couldn't hold them any longer. I didn't say a word. Just stepped back and let him in. He walked past me, looked around the small apartment, eyes scanning like he was trying to understand how a man could live so quietly, so far from the noise his girlfriend had created. I offered him a drink, not because I cared about his thirst, but because sometimes silence opens people faster than questions do. He took the glass, sat down on the edge of the couch like it might bite him, and ran a hand through his hair before finally speaking. "She told me you were abusive," he said, eyes fixed on the rim of the glass. "Said you used to scream at her, control her money, keep her isolated. Said she stayed because she was scared." I didn't blink. I'd heard this one before. It was always the same script with her, victimhood wrapped in charm and vague details no one could verify. "She said you didn't work," he continued, "that you lived off her income, that you lied about everything." Then he paused, swallowed hard, and added the line that told me everything I needed to know. "She said you were already separated, that the marriage was over, and she just hadn't told you yet." I nodded, slow and quiet, not because I believed any of it, but because I wanted him to keep talking. The words poured out like water through a busted pipe. "My fiancé found the messages," he said. "Everything. The hotel receipts, the photos, the chats. She blew up my entire life in 30 minutes. Called my parents, told my gym manager, posted screenshots on Instagram. It was a goddamn explosion." He looked up at me, finally meeting my eyes. "I didn't know she was still with you. I swear to God, I thought she left." Now that made me laugh. Not a loud one. Not even a real one. Just that sharp little exhale that says more than any sentence could. Greg didn't understand that he wasn't the villain of my story. He was just another prop she used to decorate her narrative. I let the silence stretch until it got uncomfortable, then reached over to the counter, picked up my phone, and held it in my hand without unlocking the screen. "You mind if I record this?" I asked, voice calm but clear, just in case. Greg hesitated for half a second, then shrugged. "Yeah. I don't care. I've got nothing left to lose." That was true. And he told me everything. Names, dates, locations, the lies she fed him, the promises she made, the way she swore she'd leave me but kept pushing it off. "She said she needed time," he mumbled. "Said she had to protect herself. Said you'd ruin her if she wasn't careful." He rubbed his hands together like they itched, then stared at the floor like the truth was written there, and he was only just learning how to read it. When he finished, I saved the recording to a folder already packed with evidence. I didn't threaten him, didn't promise revenge or make him feel small. I just thanked him, told him to get some sleep, and walked him to the door like he was any other visitor. He looked at me like he didn't know if he should be relieved or terrified. I didn't help him figure it out. The next morning, I took a plain white envelope, slid the USB inside, and drove to the house that still technically belonged to both of us, though she hadn't asked about the deed in weeks. I didn't ring the bell, didn't write a note, just dropped it in the mailbox and walked away like I was returning a library book I'd long since stopped caring about. That afternoon, she sent one message. "You win." That was it. "No, I'm sorry, no, can we talk?" No long-winded manipulative breakdown. Just 2 words. I stared at it for a full minute, thumb hovering over the screen, heartbeat steady and slow. Then I hit delete. No reply. No screenshot. No satisfaction. Just silence. The same silence I'd been building for months, cold, strategic, and heavy with everything she never expected me to carry this far. I went back to the apartment, sat down on the couch Greg had barely warmed the night before, and turned on the TV without turning up the volume. The sound didn't matter. Nothing anyone said did. The fight was over, and somehow I didn't feel like I'd won. Because here's the truth no one tells you. When you finally get the revenge, when the pieces fall exactly how you planned them, and the people who hurt you stumble over their own lies and choke on their own stories, you don't feel the fireworks. You don't feel the justice. You feel hollow. You feel like someone who finished a war alone, only to realize the silence afterward isn't peace. It's the echo of everything you had to become just to survive. But what if I didn't win? What if I just stopped playing? And that's the part one still don't know.